Everybody Hates Rand is a Wheel of Time podcast that will contain spoilers for all 14 books. So if you're anti-spoiler, pause this, read all 14 books, and come back. We'll be here, waiting.
Our title is a joke and is meant to be taken as such. In the context of this podcast, everybody refers to us and our cat. You are free to feel however you want about Rand, who is a fictional character. Don't DM us.
The world is a mess, Dark One stretching out his hand. The dragon's reborn, the fire's been fanned, but everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand.
Okay, here's what I found out.
Okay. About Kanye and Jeffree Star?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, apparently, first of all, there's no actual evidence, obviously.
Yeah.
But the rumor was started by a TikTok, and this sentence is absolutely wild. The TikTok was created by Ava Louise, the internet troll who last year filmed herself licking a toilet seat in an airplane for a, quote, coronavirus challenge, unquote. I think it would be a really appropriate relationship between Kanye West and Jeffree Star, because Kanye is a racist black man, and Jeffree Star is a gay man who is also the pinnacle of homophobia. Sort of like Albus Dumbledore.
Yeah.
We're just going to ignore the downfall of American democracy and roll right into the Jeffree Star Kanye West conspiracy.
Yeah.
Allow you to live in a fantasy world.
If I have to lean into one or the other, I suppose. Not that you should ignore what's going on, because it's important to be educated, but having doom scrolled through Twitter and the news for the past 8 hours, I believe I'm entitled to a break.
Yeah, like, don't disengage politically is not the message, but we're living on the day when this is all going down on the 6th. So, hopefully, on Monday when this comes out, things are looking a little bit brighter, and maybe you're ready to hear some discourse about it, but we're not currently ready to.
I don't have any.
Yeah, I don't have any hot takes, too. It's not a hot take that... I'm so tired of being like, hot take, if these were black people, then the reaction would have been very different. And I'm like, that's so obvious.
Yeah, like,
this wouldn't be happening if these were black people.
Yeah.
Like, that's the fucking point.
Yeah. So, anyway, America is a deeply racist country, and that should not be a surprise at this fucking point.
Yeah.
So, anyway, Jeffree Star...
Belching over Jeffree Star's name.
Also,
it's really powerful. I forgot Dr. Pepper makes me burp a lot more than Diet Coke does. Diet Coke has become ingrained in my system.
They're like, this is natural.
This is just part of the body.
Yeah.
It's reintegrating. Dr. Pepper is like, ooh, a fun
exciting substance.
Ooh.
So anyway, today is stinky. But welcome to Everybody Hates Rand. This is your friendly neighborhood Wheel of Time podcast. I'm Sally Kutcher.
I'm Emily Jushaw.
There, now we have an intro or something.
We do, yeah. It's in there.
You know who else is stinky? Rand.
I mean, he sure is.
I mean, they're all probably stinky because it's the Middle Ages or whatever, and nobody's bathing regularly. Except for Elaine, who in The Path of Daggers, I'm sorry to jump 2 books ahead, but I literally read a chapter of The Path of Daggers on Sunday where Elaine is like, this dark friend who we have in our custody who's being tortured, it's kind of my fault that she's being tortured because I'm in charge. And then the very next paragraph, one indent later, is like, she took a really long bath and was laughing with Brigitte and Avienda and splashing, and I'm like, you dumb shithead.
I mean, yeah, there's nothing more to be said about Elaine. That's sort of the embodiment of who she is as a person. Doing war crimes and then taking very long baths. You haven't even got to that very long bath sequence.
I will burn it. So anyway, we are in Kyrian.
Yeah, we pick up right where we left off with Rand traveling to Cairhien with his huge honor guard, which is immediately met by an even bigger honor guard that I guess just sits around in Cairhien waiting in case he shows up, which is made both of ale and Mainers.
Sure.
Berelain's private little army.
Yeah.
And this is, I don't know if it's the first time we're hearing about it, but it feels like the first time we're hearing about it that Berelain is governing Cairhien in Rand's general absence. Presumably it would have taken her a while to travel there. I don't know. Yeah. It's not like he picked her up, so.
I don't know.
But Rand provides his reasoning, which is that she voluntarily allied with him, unlike literally every other country where he had to do conquest. And so she can be trusted in that way, but also she is a foreigner who has no political interest in Cairhien because it's not even a neighboring country, mm-hmm. So theoretically she and Ruark can co-govern, mm-hmm. which is what we get is Berelain and Ruark's kind of hilarious co-parenting dynamic of Cairhien, the country.
Yeah.
Which is also complicated by gender dynamics, of course. Ruark's very patronizing to Berelain, which is not a great look for Ruark. Like, I get it, he's, 50, and she's supposed to be, 27.
Yeah.
And so it would be a little hard to treat a baby, someone who you're like, this is a baby.
This is baby.
As your political equal, but, give her some respect. She is very good at her job, which is pointed out multiple times.
Yeah, it would be one thing, again, if Ruark was governing Camelin with Elaine, who is an idiot.
Oh, yeah, that would be hilarious.
Ruark is like, I'll kill you.
No, but Berelain's good at her job.
Yeah, Berelain is a very competent ruler, and that's both given to us by, Rand and people who are like, she's good at her job, and in the actual decisions we see her making, where she's like, we need to think about what type of crops we will have in a year because the weather is fucked, and we need to feed this country. And it's like, oh.
And just the fact that, Cairhien is still stable at this point.
After a war.
After a war and nobles who just, cannot get along.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, just generally, Berelain, it's moments like these where I'm like, Berelain's such a cool character.
Yeah.
And it's such a shame that she then gets shunted into being with Perrin for the latter part of the series, because in this book, specifically, she is
very very unfortunate that Robert Jordan, tanks her plot by making her basically just a wannabe homewrecker.
I don't know, it would have been cool if Berelain was could fill part of the void that Moiraine left in being a political advisor to Rand, and could just sort of be his right-hand woman as he is trying to figure out how to govern various countries.
Yeah.
It's just occasionally I'll be reading Wheel of Time and be like, oh, here's an arc that, if it was made into its own thing, could be a really interesting book, and Berelain's is one of those. It's just being a ruler of a very small country, suddenly tasked with governing a much bigger country by, the Christ come again. To prepare for the apocalypse also.
Yeah.
Just her day-to-day would be very interesting to read about, I guess.
Yeah, especially while she's being constantly slut-shamed by every single woman in the vicinity, including Egg.
But not the wise ones.
But not the wise ones.
The wise ones
yeah!
It is so good.
Yeah.
And Juilin's I don't get why the wise ones love Berelain. And the wise ones are because she's hot and amazing. What are you talking about?
She's hot. She's competent. She's got really good titties.
She gets what she wants.
And she's just, cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. And Egg's I don't see it. She doesn't cover up her tits enough. And they're that's what we're saying.
It's awesome.
It's the best.
Yeah. Rand's I don't get why Berelain and Egg don't like each other. And it's the dynamic supposedly Robert Jordan is creating is it's because Berelain's a slut and Egg is a prude.
Yeah.
Which is just such a weird way to put women in boxes, like you do if you're Robert Jordan.
Yeah, well, and we also have to prepare Egg for her young pope arc.
Yeah.
Where she literally cannot be a slut the way that she wants to be in order to step into that role.
Well, it would have been so cool. If Robert Jordan just had any imagination at all, it would have been so cool if Egg and Berelain just, got along.
Yeah.
And Egg could be here is a mentor. Because as it is, Egg steps into power and pretty immediately takes power in a really competent direction.
Yeah.
There isn't a lot of room for Edwin to make errors or grow into the position at all.
Yeah.
Which can be really fun and empowering to read about, but as always, you kind of want to be like, well, how did she get here? At least we have with Rand in these chapters, specifically when he's making decisions, he is often hearing like Moiraine's voice in his head. And even though we didn't see those scenes directly, we know that he is working off of expertise that Moiraine equipped him with.
Yes.
With Edwin, of course, she also has a lot of her own expertise, and I hesitate to like be like, she's a Mary Sue, because that's always the box we want to put powerful women in. I just think it would be really cool if she was like, I have a friend in Berelain who has taught me a lot about governing, as well as my mentors, Moiraine and the Wise Ones, who have also taught me a lot about governing.
Yeah.
It just would be, I don't know, cool.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry I keep referencing Path of Daggers when we're supposed to be talking about Lord of Chaos.
That's what you're reading now.
But, like, I just read the scene where Egg manipulates more power from the hall, you know? And there's a lot of, like, implication that she and Swan have had a lot of conversations, and so, like, Swan is playing a role in that. But there's also a lot of, like, implication that Egg is just, like, doing such a good job at it. Like, yes, Swan is helping, and it's, like... So it's, like, nice that she has, like, her own inherent competencies and things that she is good at, but it's like nobody is that good at politics right off the bat, you know?
Yeah, like, and just, I have never liked how Swan is set up as a mentor figure for Egg. Like, obviously, Swan has a lot of knowledge that is appropriate for Edwin to utilize, but, like, Swan is also the living example of how not to do the job.
Yeah.
So.
Which is another thing where it's like, why are you taking her advice? She got deposed.
She got deposed for how badly she fucked up.
Yeah. So, yeah, like, again, not, like, Egg is a very, like, intelligent and competent person, so it's not to be like, she just got it because she's a girl.
No, we all know that the only Mary Sue in this series is Rand, who was a sword master by book 2.
Yeah.
Despite having picked up a sword
3 times.
9 weeks ago.
Yeah, but it is just like, there was so much potential for her to have really interesting relationships with other powerful women. But as we've said before, Robert Jordan doesn't allow women to be friends.
No.
So.
Yeah. He's like, women? Liking women? The only reason he allows the Wise Ones in Berelain to, like each other is because they don't actually ever interact on screen.
Yeah, like he doesn't have to show affection.
Yeah, or anything like that. I don't know. Sorry, we're jumping all over the place, but Rand gets to Cairhien, is like, where are Ruark and Berelain? I want to talk to them. They go looking for them. Avienda immediately disappears. Rand's like, what the? Mm-hmm. She just faded into the background, the wall. Mm-hmm. She's Ael. She's good at camouflage.
Yeah.
He finds Berelain and Ruark, and they're kind of walking around toward vaguely an office direction. They pass a courtyard that is full of Cairhien young people who are training with swords. I believe it's specifically women, or it's the women that Rand notices. I think he says there are men there as well. And Berelain explains that, like, there are just a lot of young Ael nobility who are... Not Ael nobility, excuse me. Cairhien nobility who are trying to adopt the ways of the Ael. And Ruark blatantly says this is offensive to us and, like, asks Rand to outlaw this practice because he says a lot of Cairhien have started asking us and we tell them because we're not, like, secretive about our practices or our culture or everything.
Yeah.
It is just very incomprehensible to white people.
Yeah.
And they're, like, mangling it.
Yeah.
He's like, so could you please stop the cultural appropriation? And Rand's like, no, I have to side with Berelain because she's technically the one I put in charge.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Berelain could have a lot of reasons for allowing, like, these people could become, theoretically, her elite bodyguards or whatever, because she allowed them to do this. Like, Berelain also has personal
Yeah.
stakes in the game.
Yeah, and it's also just like, just because you put someone in charge doesn't mean you should ignore an entire culture being like, we are offended by this, and we are, at this point, 65 to 75% of your army, it feels like.
Yeah, and just like there are more creative ways to solve the problem.
Yeah.
I guess. Like, Rand could be like, alright, tell anyone who wants to like, maybe we can work out a thing where people have to be trained by the ale, and that will just weed out tons of people, because no one is going to stick, like, look what Egg went through.
Yeah.
And Egg wasn't even trained for combat.
Yeah.
You know? Most people would just be like, oh, fuck this.
Yeah.
And the people who stuck it out would be
willing to do it correctly.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, Berelain is so concerned because there are lots of young women who are kind of taking refuge here. Rand could just be like, tell them they can't do the ale shit, but they are more than welcome to join the army.
Yeah.
Or,
women can learn swords.
Yeah. That's not a big fucking deal.
Yeah. So Rand basically just being like, I'm gonna allow the appropriation because Berelain said so is one of his many shit decisions.
Yeah, it's like not good, and it is the least interesting path possible, because then what we have is just like yet another way for cultures to clash unproductively on screen.
Yeah.
Because these people stick around and become fails, elite bodyguards.
Yeah, which is like...
Elite is an interesting word, because mostly they just fail at their job repeatedly.
Not very good at it.
And it's just like a way for the ale to be like, we hate these people, and these people to be like, we want approval from the ale, but we're not going to actually change to get anything, to get it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's a boring dynamic.
Yeah.
Dur.
Yeah. Like, it's just classic cultural appropriation. We have no respect for the ale, but we want their shit.
Yeah. Which Rand is like, the ale have brutally, like, taken this country and, in some cases, looted it twice, but that is not an excuse for them to be like, maybe we'll adopt the culture.
Yeah, which is, again, like, there's a really interesting dynamic between Kyrian and the ale that could be explored. Like, their culture, the clashing of cultures here could be really interesting, like you said. But Rand is just like, I have to make really hard decisions all the time and draw lines in the sand.
Yeah.
Rather than letting things be more liminal, the way that cultures colliding is.
Yeah, just like, I don't know, that's just like not the way culture works. If you have some people adopting the ale culture, then what's probably actually happening in Kyrian is that a lot of people are adapting to the culture in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Not just by, like, picking up a sword, but, like, economically turning to different practices.
Yeah.
And yeah, you just have a really interesting way with the ale more or less occupying this land benignly, if an occupation can ever be benign, to have these two cultures sort of shift toward each other in more interesting ways.
Absolutely.
But no, Robert Jordan's boring.
Well.
Rand and Berelain and Ruark then get to their office, and they sort of are talking about more governing matters. Rand dismisses most of his bodyguard. He says you can leave one maiden and one, I don't know what, the stone dogs, whatever.
They're the
French
Friends
shields.
of the Eagle, which feels particularly like it's supposed to give off Native American vibes.
Okay. Don't like that.
Yeah, which I'm not sure quite what to make of that.
But he says you can leave one of each, but everyone else should clear out. And Sulan's like, ugh.
Disgusting. Let me keep 80 people around you at all times.
Yeah, he's like, he talks about, he feels like he's in a parade.
Yeah.
Which, like, yeah.
There's so
How
many
could you
people.
not? There's so many. So they're chatting when an ale man named Mangan, whatever, Mangan, comes and like knocks at the door and is like, "Hello, Rand. I murdered a dude 6 days ago or whatever." Yeah. And Rand's like, "Excuse me." He's like, it was in self-defense, right? And he's like, "No, I just thought he should die," which is like, what? And it turns out because he was wearing... Oh, he had a dragon
Yeah.
tattoo and was, like, flaunting it. So, more cultural appropriation, though, again, perhaps an innocent form of cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
We would never know. He might have just seen the tattoos and
And
been like,
sick.
cool tattoo. It's also a tattoo, not the magic shiny tattoos that you get in Ruidaean. But anyway, Mangan was like, I'm gonna kill this dude, and did. And then presumably went to Berelain and Ruark and was like, now what? Because Rand said you can't just kill people. And they were like, wait till Rand gets back so he can pass judgment. And Rand is like, I already passed judgment. You can't murder people. It's a capital crime in Cairhien, so you have to be hanged. And Mangan is like, well, cool. See ya at the hanging.
Yeah, he's like, just let me know when and where.
And leaves, which is like, I mean, for a murderer, he's a pretty cool murderer.
Yeah, it's like...
Laid back.
I mean, I don't know if you should have, like, murdered someone over getting a tattoo, but at least you're willing to accept your punishment. Yeah, it's very, like, a good moment to be like, the Ale are such a fascinating culture.
Yeah.
And, like, their honor system is so interesting, and just, like, the way they approach life and death is so fascinating. And I just think they're very interesting.
They are. I love them. They're really cool. But, instead this is just kind of framed as, like, oh, look at Rand having to make hard decisions.
Yeah.
And of course it's interesting where our next section involves Rand going to Shadar Logoth with a bunch of ale, and one of the maidens gets lost, and she just haunts Rand
Forever.
unceasingly. And it's just, you know, kind of a good side-by-side example of here is how women's deaths, even when they are not caused by Rand, haunt him, whereas a man's death, which was actually caused by Rand, you don't have to institute capital punishment.
Yeah.
On a nationwide basis.
In fact, you shouldn't.
Yeah, we're against capital punishment, actually, on this podcast. But, although we've said it before, where are the prisons in this land?
I know, it's very interesting.
Usually there's at least one cool prison.
And, like, there are people, like, there are instances of, like, individual people being locked up. Like, the dungeons in...
Yeah, there's always dungeons.
Faldara, and, like, a few people just, like, held. Like, that wolf man, that Perrin meets, who's just sort of, like, imprisoned in a stable. But it's not like there are... Like, it's not like there's a prison industrial complex. You know?
Yeah, but even, like... Are we just Americans who can't imagine a society without prisons? But that seems unlikely because Robert Jordan was also an American.
Yeah, it's just very weird because it's like, I've been thinking a lot about crime and punishment in Wheel of Time as I write my Path of Daggers blogs, because Path of Daggers is just like full of crime and very little punishment, it seems like, for people who are just torturing and murdering other people. So yeah, it's just like what happens to, like, we have thief catchers like Juilin, but what happens to the thieves?
When they are caught.
When they are caught. Like, it doesn't seem like there's, like, it's like, yes, it probably is a little bit of an American bias where we have such a punitive society, but also it seems like there's a lot of, like, crime and adjacent policing, like thief catchers and guards and whatever, but it doesn't seem like there are any, like, we don't see what justice looks like unless it is instances of capital punishment. So it's like, is that the only form of justice this society has? Or is there, like, you know, restorative justice where you do community service? Are these thieves losing a hand? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, like, I would never believe that Wheel of Time has any sort of rehabilitation for criminals, because this is a, medieval, I know it's not technically medieval, but in the fantasy sense it is a medieval culture, with infrastructure just barely being figured out.
Yeah.
As we find out when Rand goes to his school and is like, roads?
Plows?
Irrigation?
The printing press?
What the fuck? But yeah, it's just, yeah, you would think there would be a greater range of punishments.
Especially because it's, like, such, like, a, nobility-based society. And, like, the nobility is notorious for punishing people who don't do things like pay their taxes.
Yeah.
Like, is there a debtor's prison?
You'd think.
Yeah, like, at least there should be a debtor's prison.
You'd think there would be anything at all, but it's like religion. Robert Jordan just sort of was like, I don't want to do that. So he didn't.
Yeah, which, like, in another instance, I'd be like, the lack of prisons is very interesting. Like, let's use fantasy as our opportunity to imagine different forms of reality.
But it doesn't feel intentional. It feels like a just a neglected part of his world building.
Yeah, because I just, again, now I'm never going to be able to get over this. What does Juilin do with the thieves when he catches them?
He just was like, here they are.
I caught them, and they're like, no more stealing.
Yeah, do you just
stealing bad?
Take back the stuff that they stole and then turn them loose? What's the truth?
So it feels like, I don't know. So, but anyway, Rand's like, I have to hang this guy, and that sucks, and you guys should have passed a judgment. I don't care that it made you uncomfortable.
And they're like,
But Rework's like, but this is my homie.
But I know him.
Yeah.
And Rand's like, I know him too. I mean, not as well, but rude. Yeah. Anyway, then Rand is like, I'm leaving to go to my school. And they're like, a bunch of people will be wanting to talk to you, including the wise ones and all the Kyrian and Terran nobles who are still here. And he's like, well, I'll be back eventually.
Yeah, he's like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, goodbye. And he leaves, finds out that his orders were followed to leave him with just 2 bodyguards. So he travels through the city much more slowly than he usually does because he only has 2 bodyguards rather than his usual parade. But he gets to his school, which is also kind of like Berelain, the first we're hearing of this properly. Rand has just set up this sort of institution where people can gather and invent things, and he like create prototypes essentially, and he can pay to have them made, which is really interesting. And also he can just award money to people at random. Like he gives Herod Fell 100 gold for making a prototype of a telescope.
Yeah.
Telescope, right? That's where you look at the stars?
Yeah, telescope.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And Rand's like, sick, that seems lit.
I know,
here's
Rand's
100 gold coins
but
or
didn't,
whatever.
like, give a bunch of money to other people. Because he's met by this, like, woman who is kind of the headmistress, and who we find out is the one who, in the last book, fashioned a crossbow that could shoot an arrow over a distance of miles.
Yeah.
To hit someone. Rand witnessed that and was like, I gotta find who did that. And apparently he did.
Grumpy lady.
But she has they have all these students who are just working on prototypes, and they've set up like this quasi-science fair setup where
everyone... It's very charming.
I know, like, I passed the book to Sally and was like, it's pretty inoffensive as Rand chapters go, because we do get to see Rand in his most likable element, where he is just like, curious and interested in learning things and talking to people, and just kind of an awkward farm boy turned dictator who also has to talk to people occasionally.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, I'm so bad at this.
Yeah, and they're just like these cool inventions. We've got an improved printing press, an improved plow system. Somebody is like, here would be a better system of irrigation. Here is technology to make our roads better.
Yeah. Someone's inventing like a hot air balloon, it sounds like, or some other form of flying.
Yeah, some like plane, because there's this girl who mumbles a lot who's like, birds, planes, and Rand is like, what was that fucking about? Yeah. And the lady's like, I don't know.
She's got like a prototype floating balloon plane thing.
There's a guy who's making something that could theoretically be a car.
Yeah.
And Rand is like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and the lady's like, I don't know either.
We don't know. We just hear terrible explosions coming from his room in the dead of night.
The guy seems like kind of a nutcase. He burns his hand. He's like,
he's like,
is that so funny? And
Rand's like, what the?
Sure.
And then Herod Fell, who's making a telescope.
Is it Herod Fell or Kintovir?
Kintovir, you're right.
Who's
Herod
Herod
Fell,
Fell?
he's the guy that Rand then
The
goes
library
and talks
guy?
to. Yeah.
There's so many guys.
The nerd guy.
Okay.
I know.
Got telescope guy and nerd guy.
Kintovir is telescope guy. Sorry.
No, but he's just got like 1 million telescopes.
Yeah, and Rand's like, sweet. Rand loves his
I
telescope.
mean, I'm
business.
also like sweet, but I still raise the question, where are the glassblowing studios if he's making all these lenses? Like, I know that nobody else cares about that, but I care about that.
Well, I'd like a bigger tour of this school because presumably you would have to have like a smithy to be creating this type of things, as well as, you know, we see the library kind of, or it's referenced, but there should be a glass blowing place. There should be all types of like workshops for people to be making the things that go into their prototypes.
And that sounds so interesting.
No, it sounds like a really cool.
Yeah, I want to go hang out there.
Yeah, it's a neat place. Anyway, Rand is in like, can I go talk to Herod Fell? And the lady's like, yeah, he's just up in his room. He's a little nerd. So Rand goes up to this guy's room. Apparently he's an Andoran who just was like holed up in the Royal Library in Kyrian.
Like what?
Doing research or whatever. He's like, stay out here to his bodyguards, who are a young woman and a young man, and are like eyeing each other.
Yeah.
Starting an ale courtship ritual. So Rand is like, oh, they'll definitely leave me alone.
Yeah.
Do a fucking quickie out in the hallway. But he goes in to talk to Herod Fell, who's just this older man, kind of fills this trope of sort of crazy, eccentric, socially awkward, very smart guy. Mm-hmm. He seems to have done a lot of research about a lot of things. Rand is like, what do you know about the what do you know about the Einstein Warder bond? And he's like, not really anything. Rand's like, can you break it? And he's like, no. Don't think so.
Nope.
Rand's like, super helpful. He asks about, he says, what about the question I asked you last time? And we don't hear exactly what that question was, but Herod Fell says something about Termageddon. And it's really easy to like skim over the first time you're reading this series when you know how the series ends and how much of the last book in particular is devoted to Rand's quandary of how exactly to defeat the Dark One and how exactly to go about sealing his prison. This is a more interesting discussion because we're seeing how a lot of Rand's ideas could be developed in the future. But Herod Fell proposes this theory that by the end of Termageddon, or not necessarily by the end of Termageddon, but at some point, the seal in the Dark One's prison will be not just patched, but the prison will be made whole again. Mm-hmm. Because if time is a wheel, then at some point, the time is going to come again where the prison in its whole form will have to be bored into. Mm-hmm. Which is just, you know, it's interesting to see this concept of the wheel of time actually being interrogated.
Yeah.
Because everything feels so linear when we're in it right now, and it's concerned with the end of the world. But here's a guy saying, okay, but time is a wheel, so...
Yeah, it's also one of, like, the only, like, a handful of actual, like, theological considerations where Rand is like, well, but no, that can't be made whole because there has to be a bore in it. And he's like, well, do you think the creator made the Dark One's prison with like a hole in it already? And just like...
Yeah, patched over and that was the weak spot.
Yeah, and just like these really interesting conversations about like, was the Dark One's prison being broken an intentional thing then?
Yeah.
Like, is that what you're proposing, Rand, versus like, yeah, if time is cyclical, then it's gonna have to be remade in order for it to be bored into, and then that suggests its own thing about the cosmological nature of the universe, that like evil is always going to have its prison broken into. It's just a really interesting little conversation.
Yeah, you're right. It's the only like theological conversation that we have. It reminds me of the like Christian notion of like, well, if Adam and Eve weren't supposed to eat the apple, or the fruit, I guess. It's not specifically an apple. It's just always depicted that way. Yeah. If they weren't supposed to eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge, then why did God make the tree of knowledge right there?
Yeah.
Why did he make edible fruit on it?
Yeah.
And if you're Mormon, then you say, well, they were supposed to eat it.
Yes.
You just, like, lean into that. I don't know how other Christian.
What's the funniest possible fruit it could have been?
Well, theoretically, it has to be on a tree, right?
Yeah.
Fruit that grows on trees. Apple, pear, peach, cherry. It would be a peach, and you would recreate the Call Me By Your Name.
Disgusting. don't do Eve dirty like this. She doesn't deserve it.
Guava. What's a fruit that's, like, really hard to break into? A grapefruit?
Yeah, something that she had to, like, peel.
Yeah, she's like, she has to really think about it. A pomegranate.
Yeah, she's just eating handfuls of pomegranate seeds.
Yeah, exactly.
Really determined.
Just mulberry is weird.
Yeah.
Or a banana. Make eye contact with Adam while eating the banana. And that's when he was like,
wait.
Oh.
Looks down.
Maybe.
Maybe this thing has a purpose.
Babe, I had an idea.
Wait, listen. And she's like, you're disgusting.
Ew.
I'm just eating a banana. Anyway, that took a weird turn. Yeah, so they have their little
debate.
little theological conversation, and then we switch over to Eggy.
Oh, Rand asks about the seals being
that's
broken,
right.
And Harrenfel's like, no, you can't do that.
Why would you do that?
Only a madman would do that.
Rand's like,
And
well...
then Rand's like, well, the voice in my head won't shut up about it, is why I'm asking.
So I was like, well, you got me there. Yeah, Lucifer's like, break them!
Ah!
Break the seals!
Yeah, Rand talks about how he's alone except for his 2 bodyguards and the voice in his head, Lutheran and Alana, who feels like he describes a hand hovering just over the back of his neck. Which really is a deeply unpleasant...
It's harrowing.
Even if it's your own hand. I'm doing it right now and I'm just like, ah! It's the worst. Because I want to crawl out of my skin, so...
It's not a good feeling.
Poor Rand.
Yeah.
But yeah, we then switch over to Egg, who is lost in the Kyrian palace. Which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Looking for Rand, she tells us that Avienda went to the Wise Ones, and then they immediately all sequestered with her, and Egg was not invited. So she's like, fine, I'll go talk to Rand.
Mm-hmm.
She runs into Soralia, who's like, what the fuck are you doing here? And Egg's like, I'm doing my exercise, you know? Which usually, apparently, she just has to walk fully around the city wall, which I'm like, what is that, like 8 to 10 miles?
Yeah, actually, they make me do it like 5 or 6 times.
I'm like, you're just walking all day long.
How are you... They say light exercise.
Exercise
is her treatment plan.
I mean, yeah, it's the
Apparently
ale
that
idea
means
of brisk.
45 miles a day.
Seriously.
Which is that even possible to walk 45
Yeah.
miles in a day?
And someone
I
is
don't
like,
know.
you need to eat more. And I'm like, she's walking all the time. When does she have time to eat?
She's just like shoving granola bars in
She's
her
like
mouth.
me as a dog walker in New York. I was
She's got a
very
little
skinny.
Fanny pack of Clif bars.
Yeah, seriously. But she and Soralia have this funny conversation. I can't remember about what, really. Soralia is like, do you have a boy that you're interested in? And Egg's like, no, but is also thinking about her sex dreams of Gawain. She starts blushing. And Soralia's like, now, I have a multitude of young men who I can describe to you, who you might be interested in. She's just like very grandmotherly, like,
Yeah.
is it so-and-so? Is it so-and-so?
Yeah.
And Egg's like, no. Even though all of these guys sound way better than Gawain.
Right? Like, you could pick any ailment off the street of the waste, and it would be a better match for
She
Egg
could marry
than-
Mangan, the murderer, and I would approve better than I do of Gawain.
I mean, at least he had some sort of, like, moral grounds for the murder he committed, which is the honor of his culture. Gawain's just like, I have to kill Rand because a man told me he maybe killed my mom.
Because of corn on the cob salesman. I think it's hilarious. Egg is like mortally embarrassed by how Soralia describes men naked.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's very helpful information to know. I don't know. I think we live in a culture where nudity is so taboo that it's like, well, it is nice to know what people look like.
Yeah.
Whether or not you would find them attractive.
Yeah. Because, I mean, it's also very funny because you have to assume I can't say her name. Cerelia is like, this is the size of his dick. But also, consider his scars. And...
Or just like, he has a very nice ass.
He's got a great little bum. Really good abs.
Great calves.
Yeah.
Well-turned calves.
Well-turned calves. Lovely hands. And Egg is like, I want to die.
And I'd be like, no, I want to know.
And I'd be like, tell me more.
Tell me more
what is
about...
like the bicep situation?
No, what is, in your old lady opinion, his best physical trait? I'm like, that is good information to know.
Yeah. Lovingly describe his clavicle to me. That's very important.
And also just like, if you're a sheltered young woman like Egg is growing up in a conservative culture, I think it's healthy for dicks to be described to you in detail occasionally.
Yeah, I mean, the first time you see one, if you grew up like in a place like Utah where it's like nudity, well, any thought of nudity, even your own, will send you directly to hell. The penis is a very alarming thing to see for the first time.
Boy, yeah, and there's so many variations it could have.
Yeah.
Not just in, like, size, but also, like, it could be circumcised, it could be uncircumcised.
Yeah, exactly.
And those types of dicks look very different.
Yeah.
And it's like, girl, you want to know. You want to have his dick described to you so you're not like, whoa, when you first see it.
Yeah, plus I also just think, it, like... destigmatizes it so that you don't make the man feel ashamed of his body the first time you see it, and you're just like, see something you don't expect.
Yeah.
What if Sorley is like, Galen has like a weird birthmark, and Egg saw it for the first time and was like, Jesus. Like, that would make him feel so bad.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just think it is an overall good practice, and I wish some hilarious old woman would describe the bodies of my suitors to me if they were comfortable with that.
Yeah, presumably the ale are all cool.
Yeah, the ale are like, whatever. We also, everyone's just talking about how each other looks all the time. Which is another wonderful thing about ale culture.
Yeah, they're all just naked together.
Yeah, they're all just like...
It's all about context for the ale, which I love.
Yeah. It's like
they're like bathing together, but then Surly is like, I can also use this information to describe to a potential suitor.
And the ale are like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Make sure you accentuate how good my butt looks.
I know.
And she's like, it's noted, don't you worry. She's like, I got it. Got my list of very good asses. I keep it in the memory bank. And they're all like, hell yeah, Grandma.
Oh, God. Love the ale.
Yeah.
Anyway, Egg does eventually find Rand's rooms and sets up camp there. Rand comes in and is like, hey. And she's like, I need you to help me. I need you to help me. The Wise Ones are, like, keeping me as a convalescent. And I'm ready to restart my training, but they are not letting me. And Rand's like, could you tell me where Elaine is? And Egg is like, no, I can't, because I made a promise, or whatever. And Rand's like, well, I can't help you for nothing. Which I'm like, I mean, you can. There's nothing stopping you.
Supposed to be your friend.
Yeah, you guys are friends, but supposedly. But also, like, he does say, I don't know how much I can actually help you with the Wise Ones.
Yeah.
It's not like they listen to me.
Yeah.
So, even if he'd been like, sure, I don't think anything would have actually changed for Egg.
Yeah.
Whatever. The whole question of why Egg keeps Rand in the dark regarding Elaine and Nynaeve's exact position is stranger to me. I don't really get it.
I also am, like, shocked that he doesn't know. Because, like, he knows the Aes Sedai are in Salidar, right?
Does he know? Not.
I guess I got the impression when he was talking to Varen and Alana that he knew where they were.
I think he just knows that there is a gathering.
Okay.
And that he knows Elaine and Nynaeve are with them, but
Sorry.
No one has told him specifically where, which I guess, like, the embassy hasn't reached him yet, and he hasn't had any of the channels of intelligence gathering that any of the Aes Sedai had, so yeah, I guess he just doesn't know. But that fact is not emphasized enough for us, I guess, or is not made clear enough, contrasted to the very long plot when Nynaeve and Elaine were trying to figure out where to go. You know, like, by the time Nynaeve and Elaine get there, you have spent so long with them trying to get there that you're like, surely everyone knows where Salidar is by now.
Especially because we also spend so much fucking time there.
Yeah, but, like, if I were Rand and was, like, only knew that there was a gathering of Aes Sedai somewhere who may or may not support me, then, yeah, I guess I'd be pretty curious about where they were. Yeah. Like, what if they're in his backyard, you know?
They're just at the next farm over from the Black Tower.
He's like,
to hide. Never expected.
This is terrible. Nothing good can happen. But anyway. Edwin leaves. Rand is like, I'm sad. And then we go over to a garden where Juilin is continuing to send Rand's bodyguards around, but, you know, more discreetly, I guess.
They're like secret guarding him.
Trying to act casual while they guard him, which is just like a pointless end of a pointless entry in the long and overall useless dialogue between Rand and Juilin about how to best bodyguard him.
Yeah.
Like, again, a creative solution could be reached here. If Rand was just like, this is simply too many bodyguards, but I do understand that you guys have an honor system that requires you to guard me. Perhaps we could set up a different rotation.
Yeah.
Or something different.
Yeah, it's also just one of those instances where it's like, I don't know, I feel like if I had a bodyguard who was like a professional bodyguard, I would let them set the standards for how they are going to bodyguard me. Like, of course you should have a say in it.
Yeah.
Like, of what you're comfortable with. But yeah, it's again, that's like, why don't we have a dialogue where you obviously have the expertise, but it is also my life, so like, let's talk about it.
Yeah. Any conversation, productive conversation, things that don't exist in the Wheel of Time. Friendship, productive conversation, prisons. It's very, very confusing.
Interesting.
Anyway, that's those chapters. Next week, like I referenced, Rand will interact with some Ogier.
Nice.
Loyal's,
oh my gosh.
Loyal's mother and fiance are just like, hey, where is he? Question mark.
Please help me find our delinquent Ogier.
And then Rand and a company of people will go to Shadar Logoth to seal the Waygate there. I think it's the intention. Etc., and drama will happen.
Mm-hmm.
But that is 3 chapters, so a little bit of a bigger chunk of change there. That's it. Thank you to Glenna Mackenzie for our theme song. Thanks to all of you for listening. Thank you to our supporters on Patreon, and our followers on social media.
Yeah, we love you guys.
Anything to add?
No, I think we've done enough damage to the people.
That's probably true. Hopefully Monday is better than the Wednesday we are recording on. But either way, we hope this was a nice little break for you.
Yeah.
It was for us, sort of.
Yeah, we're gonna go eat cake and watch some comfort TV.
Yep.
Don't really have a sign-off.
Do you have a sign-off?
I don't really have one. I'm trying to think of anything. It feels like all the bad stuff that's happening is, like, bad. Not, like, funny bad.
Yeah, it's, like, just bad.
So I guess we'll just leave you with your weekly reminder to not do war crimes.
No.
And to lovingly describe the bodies of your suitors. Thank you, and good night.